I really would love to just inspire you today, encourage you and motivate you to get out of where you may have been stuck for years, to move forward in your life without thinking that God has forgotten you or that He doesn't have a plan for your life anymore. As a matter of fact, I believe this word is going to take some of us and uproot us out of our wilderness and cause us to move into the promises that God has for our lives. So, in the beginning of the year, January, I believe it was about the 10th of January, I woke up and I was praying because every year the Lord gives me different scriptures specifically for each year. And the scripture for this year was from Isaiah 43:19. And if you start reading the verse 15, 16, 17, 18, a little bit prior to that, the Lord is speaking to the children of Israel, and He's basically telling them, everything that I have done for you in crossing the Red Sea, in making you walk on dry land and getting onto the other side, I have done all these amazing miracles for you, but nevertheless, I love verse 19. It says, but forget all that, because nothing compares to what I am about to do right now. And I want you to think today of what is God doing right now in your life that you are missing on because you're still connected and you're still following the old revelation, your old experiences with the Lord, your old wilderness times with God. Because today, God is doing something brand new and it's about to come forth. So wanting or not, God is going to do a miracle in your life. And all it takes is for us to actually participate and be a part of it. So as I'm reading that verse, I realize that it's very easy for people to get stuck not just in the bad of circumstances, but to also get stuck in the good of their past miracles. With other words, we begin to glorify how everything looked like in the past because somehow we are afraid right now to believe God for the new impossibilities that are ahead of us that He can turn into a miracle. And the Lord is always very good in reminding us, if I have been in your past, if I have done it then, and if you have walked on dry land and come onto the other side, then I am able to do all of this right now in your life. So forget all. And by forgetting, He doesn't mean don't remember. He means don't get stuck and get settled in the past. Remember it and keep on moving forward because I have something brand new that I am stirring up right now in the heavenlies that is going to be manifested right here on this earth. And you wanting or not, it's up to you to participate. But I am going to do it either way. And so I got up and I thought, well, that is it. I want to be a part of the new things that God is doing in 2019, not glorifying all the stuff that happened in 2018. And so it has to be a time when we literally make a conscious decision to get up out of our seat, out of our bed, out of our couch, out of our belief and unbelief, out of our fear, out of our sickness, out of our dysfunction, and to say, God, you're doing a new thing, and therefore I am crossing over out of dysfunction into full function, out of depression into encouragement, out of sickness into healing, out of the oppressive thoughts that I have been holding in my mind into I have the mind of Christ, and everything that I am focusing on right now is going to work in my behalf because I'm serving the one that is still alive and He doesn't change. So I'm crossing over into a miracle mindset and crossing out of a complaining mindset. You still with me? So let's move into Joshua chapter 3 because that is where the actual second crossing of the children of Israel takes place. So first they crossed in Exodus with Moses being the leader out of the Egyptian bondage and the bondage under Pharaoh. They went through the Red Sea, and all Moses had to do is raise his staff, and then the Red Sea parted as he put his feet into the waters. But here we see, again, impossibility. It has to do with water. But this time, it wasn't just one person. It was several people that were the priests carrying the Ark of the Covenant that had to step in forward, step together, and then the waters parted. So I saw something significant. In the first crossing, it was just one leader that was leading everyone. In the second crossing, we see Joshua raised up as a leader because God is speaking to him. But it was also Caleb, because both of them were the spies that went with the other 8 prior to that to examine if the land of Canaan was good. And they were the only 2 that came back and had a good report saying it flows with milk and honey, and though there are giants in the land belongs to us. We need to go and occupy it. Everybody else came back, they complained, they griped about, and they died in their wilderness. But the ones that actually stuck it out, believed the words of Joshua and Caleb, were the ones that crossed over on the second time into the promised land that God had for Israel. So the second crossing involved not just one person, but several people crossing together. In the second part of where God has brought us as a church right now, it's not going to take one person on TV. It's not going to take one evangelist. It's not going to take just several people from the church running everything. It's going to take all of us crossing over and ushering the presence of God on this earth. So today, I am speaking to you as a whole army of believers. We're all in this together. It's not just up to me and 3 other people to cross over and hold up the Ark of the Covenant. We live in a new covenant. It's called the New Testament because of what Jesus did for us on the cross. We are the living carriers of His presence because that's what the Ark of the Covenant represents in the Old Testament. But now we're the living presence of God being carried in earthly vessels. What an honor to be able to be the hands and feet of Jesus, to bring His love to people, to be able to show up and say wherever we cross, the parting of whatever Red Sea, whatever impossibilities in front of us is going to start happening because we as believers understand our authority. We walk in that authority. We walk in that anointing. And when we show up, there is no impossibility that can stand God's plan. That is who you are called to do and be. So we are together going to cross over today. But I'm not there yet, so hang in tight. We're getting to that point. So the children of Israel, I have noticed when I was studying how they lived their life in the wilderness, they had everything provided for them. During the wilderness experience, they griped and complained every single day, despite the fact that they were led every day by the cloud during the day and the fire by night for the direction that they needed to go around the wilderness. Not only that, but their clothes maintained just the way they had them. They never got worn out. Every single day, 40 years, wore the same thing and woke up like they were coming fresh out of the manufacturer. That's a miracle right there. Their shoes didn't thin out. They still were, out there tracking along, and it was never enough. They had manna every single day, and every day they got afraid that maybe the manna will run out tomorrow. So they started storing it, just in case God forgot to provide for them today. And despite of everything that happened, because it was so visible and so tangible of what God was doing in their life, they still couldn't see the miraculous because they were so focused on what they didn't have. So ask yourself today, what are you focused on that is causing you not to see God's power working on your behalf? Because it's all about perception. It's not the circumstances that happen to us, it's the perception that we have about the circumstances that causes us to either see and recognize God's hand in our life during that time, or to completely dismiss His ability and to begin to complain just like they did and wander around in our thoughts. A few years ago, when I was in Seattle, Washington, I met with a theologian and a philosophist by the name of Father Spitzer. He is a Catholic born-again believer, and he has spent his entire life just studying behavioral psychology. And he came up with these 4 levels of happiness and how people as human beings strive to achieve the highest level of happiness in their life, but most of the time get stuck on a certain level and they can never progress forward. So he identifies them as 4 levels because of the accomplishments and how we live our life. And he says that the first level of happiness is actually the instant gratification. When you're hungry or thirsty and you want some food, or you want to go buy something from the store and you have the money and the accessibility, you just show up, you get it, and it makes you instantly happy. It doesn't have any kind of connection to the actual change of the neuron of the brain, because instant gratification does not alter behavior. That's why you are never satisfied. That's why you wake up the next day and that level of happiness is never good enough for you, because it keeps you in a constant want for something more. The second level of happiness was when you finally begin to set goals, and those goals get to be fulfilled. So he says, if you set a goal to go to high school or college, get married, get a job, get a family, then you're actually moving towards something, and it gives you energy and a momentum. And the more you fulfill those goals, the more you feel like you are achieving a new level of happiness in your life. Unfortunately, the second level of happiness, although it's not about instant gratification, is still as bad as the first level, because you're still living with a selfish ambition and a desire, and that is the first priority on the first and second level. The third level was when the person is finally had enough of just living selfishly and decides, I'm no longer going to be selfish. Now I'm going to be selfless. So I'm going to think about myself a little bit less and walk a little bit with more empathy towards the need of somebody else. So I'm going to start providing for the needs of those around us. He actually said that most people never get to that level of happiness in their life, because the first and the second level are so predominant in our culture today that we don't even think that there could be anything more besides us living for ourselves. So on the third level, we actually are looking outside of us and realizing, oh, you know what? Now that I have enough for me, I can meet the needs of somebody else. So you begin to look for opportunities to be a blessing rather than everybody blessing you. But he said the fourth level is the ultimate level of achievement of happiness, and that is the connection of us and our spirit that we carry as human beings to the supernatural power, not of a universe and not of another God, but to the supernatural power of Jesus Christ. Because it is the only one that can bring a connection to our spirit and change the mirroring neuron of our brain to cause us to move from a happiness to a place of joy. And so when you move from happiness and you're no longer just running after what satisfies you emotionally, you begin to see joy even in the circumstances that don't look joyful. Even in the problems while you're still walking through them, because of the connection that the brain actually has with the supernatural power of God. And it can never happen as long as we're connected to a planet or universe. I know that right now, the age that we're living in, it's somehow come to a place of being cool if you say that the universe is working on your behalf. Well, I will tell you this. That walks and runs really well with how the Communist Party taught us to believe. It is a very good communistic ideology that there is nothing else except the Communist Party running your life. But hey, you believe in the planets and you believe in witchcraft and you can believe in anything else. As long as it's not Jesus, we're okay. You see, the moment you mention Jesus, He is a threat and He is a weapon in your hand to defeat the enemy that is trying to confuse and destroy this generation. So instead of trying to fit in the society bubble of saying the universe help me, keep on saying it's Jesus that created the universe. It's Jesus who connects my body, my spirit with Himself and with His Spirit living on the inside of me that causes me to come out of my wilderness and cross over into a promised land that He has for me. And I am not willing to die in the wilderness experiences of my life. No matter how great they used to be, I am willing to cross over today. Are you still with me? And there they were, getting ready to come onto the other side. And early in the morning, Joshua chapter 3, verses 1 through 3, Joshua actually called onto the priests and he sent them forth by 3,000 feet, which was like almost a mile, into the water of the river of Jordan. And something important during that time of the year, it was springtime. The river of Jordan was a boisterous river. You could not just cross it on your own. You had to have a supernatural power working on your behalf unless you had a big boat, and they didn't. So God always causes us to do something in the most inopportune time in the natural. He's always going to ask us to step out of a comfort zone in our life during the time when we feel the most inadequate, the most unequipped, and during the time when nothing in the natural makes sense. You may feel like, oh man, I just said yes to the Lord. I'm going to go and be in full-time ministry, and I don't have a job, and God is asking me to do all of these things. Or He's asking you to actually go and be a blessing to somebody else, and you're looking and you're realizing, I don't have all this money to be a blessing. But this is the time when God wants you to step out by faith so that He can show up and be a part of your miracle. If you always know how to play God, why do you need God? You know? So it's very good to make room for God in our life. Every year, I have purposed that I would give a lot of things away just so that I have space for God to do a miraculous thing. Last year, I gave 60% of my stuff because I travel 48 weeks out of the year. I'm barely home. I thought, why do I even have all this stuff lying around here just to collect dust? Let's just give them away. And this year, I decided I'm going to sell whatever else I have. And the moment I made that decision, because I wanted to just be free. And I don't know if you've ever been without anything, but it's the most liberating thing in life. I mean, I came here with only 2 suitcases and I survived for the first 3 years. So I figured, once you've been on the bottom and you know how to live and be free and still walk in joy, hey, it doesn't matter if I've been serving God for, 20 plus more years later. I want to make room for Him to manifest His greatness. So I called up the next day, a friend of mine, I said, guess what? I decided I'm going to sell everything and I'm going to move out of this apartment. And she said, well, what are you selling? And I said, all of my furniture and my car. And she said, oh, I want to buy it. You're never home. It looks brand new. We'll just buy the whole thing. And I'm like, wow, that was a miracle right there. Because you know that you can't just sell all your furniture in just 1 minute, right? And then whatever else I had, little desks and tables and stuff like that, I called 2 more friends and I said, if in case you know anybody that wants anything, I'm selling it. And 2 days later, it was all gone. It was sold. And I sat there thinking, wow, this is amazing. Because God said I'm doing something brand new. I felt like I want to cross onto the other side without moving all this luggage with me. I want to go somewhere. I want to be free to move and to do the will of God even faster. So I'm just going to do that. But, some of you have kids. I wouldn't encourage you selling everything and living without nothing. That probably will cause a lot of mad people. But for me, it works. So I am known to be one of these people that I just get an idea and I get up the next day and I do it because I feel like I'm missing out on time if I don't just start doing something. I want to challenge you today. Instead of just coming to church and saying, I did my check-in card for Sunday or Saturday. I showed up. I worshiped. I waved hands. I'm here. Do something during the week that is out of your comfort zone. With other words, it's out of your regular wilderness experience. It's out of the provision of God's manna. It's out of the time when God is saying, okay, I've provided for you when you were young in your faith. But now that you have grown up, it's time to do a second crossing over because you're now in partnership with me. See, the first crossing over is when they were babies. They had no idea what they were doing, the children of Israel. They were just following. The second crossing over, they had responsibility. They had to go in and exercise their authority to fight off giants in that promised land. Immediately when they crossed over, they had to march around the walls of Jericho in order to possess that city. They had to worship, they had to pray, they had to wait. And miracles didn't just happen overnight, but they did happen, but somebody had to stand and believe and wait. And while we're on this waiting season, I want to just share a quick story of one of my experiences that it's kind of a funny story now looking back. It wasn't as fun when I was doing it, but isn't that how everything in life is? So I decided to jump out of an airplane instead of just fly on it, and it's called skydiving. So if anybody here has gone skydiving, you can relate to the story. But basically, I was organizing an 18th birthday party for one of the guys that was in our training program. He went there to skydive. I was driving, and his friends supposedly were all going to show up and skydive with him. Nobody showed up because they all went online and found out where we're jumping from, 12,000 feet in the air. And then they didn't think that it was worth the $180 to try and die that day, so they didn't come. But since I'm waiting there, and he's almost getting discouraged and talking himself out of the jump, I said, hey, don't worry about it. I'm going to jump with you. So it's one of those deals where it was not on my bucket list where I woke up every day thinking, yes, one day when I grow up, I'm just going to jump off an airplane. So there was no mental preparation for me to even envision myself jumping out of an airplane. And a lot of times when you don't have enough time to do something scary, you just jump in there and you forget that it's that scary. See, some of you have been sitting in the wilderness of your life for so long that you prefigured what's happening ahead because you had so many negative experiences in the past that now you're envisioning all the negative in the future when God is saying, I didn't ask you to figure out the future. All I said is I'm doing a new thing. So you can just jump out and cooperate, or you can still stand there and be fearful. So here I was. I thought, I'm just gonna jump. Well, before you jump, you get to pick two suits. You can, out of two suits actually. You get to pick either an orange one or a blue one. Well, I picked up a blue one because, I thought if I'm gonna be jumping and it could be my last day, at least blue looks good on me. So you get harnessed, you get the blue suit on, and then you sit down and for an hour and a half you watch a video of how you may die if the parachute does not open. So by the end of the video, you've got to sign paperwork that basically says if you do die today because of malfunction in the suit and in the parachute and in the instructor's inability to pull the parachute, that you or your relatives will not sue the company. And now that you figure this out, it could be your last day. I'm just envisioning headlines. Ceitci dies while skydiving from 12,000 feet in the air into the ocean of California. Well, I thought that kind of sounds fun. So I signed my name next to it, and then we get on the plane. Nobody prepared me for what was next. I mean, it all looks fun on pictures, right? So I jump. The person that is the instructor, it was his 1,000th jump that day, so I was pretty sure we're gonna make it alive. And we had a video camera person because, I'm not gonna be jumping just for fun for the rest of my life. This had to be recorded because I'm thinking it would be really fun to show on camera one day to somebody else. I missed a few details in the instructions because I was so excited about getting videoed while I'm jumping. So here's what takes place. You have goggles that are really big, and so you already look hilarious. Then you have a helmet on, and then you have all of that strapping on. You can't breathe. And when you jump, you literally go 180 degrees into the air, and then you're flying as fast as you can, where you feel like your skin is about to fly off of your face. And within less than 10 seconds, you're already at 5,000 feet. And at 5,000 feet, you gotta pull the parachute handle so that it can bump you back up so you don't actually dive 6 feet under into the ground. Well, I am waving at the camera, guys. I am not thinking about parachute. I'm thinking, okay, am I looking cute for the camera at the moment? And I'm not realizing that all of my saliva is coming out of my mouth because it is opened. I missed a little detail in the explanation there that says keep your mouth shut while you're flying so that you can still maintain your saliva and your breath. So about 5,000 feet into it, I'm like, I can't breathe and I have no saliva left. And then the instructor is like, is your mouth closed? I'm like, no, I'm waving at the camera. It's so fun. While I'm thinking in the back of my mind, I'm never doing this again. And he was like, shut your mouth. And I'm like, oh, okay. Well, he pulls the parachute handle and it bumps us up all the way back to the almost 12,000 feet into the air. And I'm like, what did just happen? We were already visible and now we're back in the hidden clouds of nowhere. And it is supposed to be gliding experience. It's called gliding. You're gliding around just to sightsee. And I am getting dizzy, so it's not the best exciting part. So I'm like, can we land? Because I'm not feeling that good. He was like, no, we're not landing until you're ready. And I'm like, what do you mean? He was like, I gotta teach you how to land properly so that you don't break your legs upon landing. And he says to me, you're gonna have to start practicing while we're over here gliding how to raise your legs all the way up to your chest. And when we land slowly on the ground, I am going to be the one that runs and pulls the parachute behind. And then I'm gonna tell you when to put your legs down. And I thought, wow, I can't even breathe. I can't even pull my legs up. This was a long process. I'm trying really hard and I'm thinking, I never follow instructions anyway. Why would this even matter? And I thought, well, but on a second thought, I don't want to break my legs. And I thought, I'll just figure it out upon landing. So here is how this connects. Eventually, we end up landing, and the parachute got behind us. I did put my feet on the ground as soon as he put his. And so we both ran the little runway, and everybody was cheering us and clapping for us. And I was like, yeah, this looks like when you're entering heaven and everybody is there cheering you on. You made it. You didn't break your legs coming into heaven, but you are alive. Yep, that was me. So I finally landed, smiled for the picture. After all, it has to be documented. And then I went home and I started thinking about our path and our spiritual impact that we have on this earth. And how often, just as we're like, yes, finally I said yes to God. It's going to be this amazing experience. We're going to be jumping from the highest places. We're going to be on stages. We're going to be holding microphones. There are going to be cameras there. Everybody's going to be looking at us. They're going to be recording us. We're going to be the big deal. Social media likes, everything. And so you begin to smile a lot, and you begin to keep your mouth open a lot. And now all of your saliva, which is our pride, which is our unresolved emotional traumatic experiences from the past. We're talking so much, trying to think we're impressing everybody else just because there is a camera and lights in front of us. We don't realize we're losing our breath onto the other side trying to cross over because we're still so enamored with the camera and with the opportunity to finally have our turn on this earth. There are so many people that graduated Bible school with me that had the wrong idea of fame. Everybody graduating, or I would say 90% of them, thought the moment we graduate and we tell our vision to the world, money is just going to come in. People are just going to come and follow us and worship us. Unfortunately, statistics show that youth pastors that enter youth ministry do not even last for up to 6 months. Nevertheless, the first 5 years of youth ministry. Everybody quits because they get discouraged, they get overworked, they don't know how to pace themselves, they don't have personal revelation of what God is doing in their life. They're preaching sermons off the internet, thinking that they're going to change somebody's life, and doesn't change anything unless you've lived in the hidden clouds, swerving around while God is saying you're not going to be revealed until it's time for you to run. So if you're one of those people thinking that you're not in the spotlight and you're in the darkness, that is the best place to be. Because there has to be a time when you walk in the calling of God on your life and nobody recognizes you and you're still walking on level 4 of happiness. And you're still connected with the power of God and you're still saying, it's okay if nobody knows me. I am doing this because He's called me, because Jesus has asked me to do it. And then, while I'm out there waving at the camera, looking at all these people looking at us, I'm thinking, oh wow, they're probably admiring the fact that we pulled the parachute, we're still alive, we're still flying. For the longest time, I thought that everybody that signed up for my newsletter read it, like all these thousands of people. Come to find out, 90% of them weren't reading it. They were throwing it in the trash. And I have been publishing a newsletter every month for 24 years straight. But it's not because I need to impress everybody else. It's because I wanted to be consistent and to say to the enemy, every single month we did the newsletter, I'm still here, I'm still alive. Even if we have a little bit of money, we're still going to make a big dent and we're still getting people out of darkness into God's kingdom. So I do things not because everybody needs to know. I got to remind myself of where I've been and where I'm at and where I'm going. So when you're flying high and up there in your mindset, in your goals, in your vision, begin to remember that those are the times that God is establishing His character inside of you. He's building empathy for those people that you're going to be reaching once you make a landing. That you're not there to boss everybody around, you're there to actually serve everybody around. And it only happens if we get finally tired out of the wilderness mindset of it's all about us and God serving us, to actually going into a promised land and saying, God, this is your land. This nation is your land. We are standing on its ground, and we are saying we're not going anywhere until we win America for you again. We're not going anywhere until everybody comes to know you, Jesus. We're standing up and saying we're no longer going to live in a selfish, introspective, introverted way. We're going to live looking around us and saying, how can I meet the need of the person next to me? How could I meet the need of this community? You don't have to go to Africa or Europe to meet needs. You've got plenty of them right here. So it's good while we're thinking like me on the parachute that I'm just going to land there and everybody's just going to applaud me. That while nobody is applauding you, you're already serving those who will never even say thank you. That is what true Christianity is all about. And when we finally went up into the air again, I thought, oh no, this is going to take forever to get back down. Don't you feel like there are times in life when you're like, oh gosh, how long is this transition going to last? I thought that I was on my way into the new things that God is doing. I thought that He already took me out of my wilderness and I am now walking into my promised land. Well, transition can last as long as you want it to. It depends on how fast you choose to walk. It depends on how fast you choose to obey and move in your mindset in the things that God is asking you to do today. So the children of Israel had a little bit of a lay in between the priest with the Ark of the Covenant and then them following after. And when you read this whole chapter there, you're going to see that I wondered, why did they have to wait for everybody from the priest carrying the ark to get there, and then 3,000 feet was the distance, and then they would cross in? Well, just in case they decided to camp over onto the wilderness, they still had an opportunity to stay over. See, God is never going to push you to enter any new season of life. He's still going to give you an opportunity to either follow Him or to maintain your comfort zone. And it's up to us to see what's happening and to say, I'm not waiting, I am going onto the other side. And the moment they got there, this is the second crossing, and if you read the first one, and then in Isaiah 43, 15 and 16, God is constantly emphasizing that He parted the Red Sea and there was a dry land, dry ground right underneath them. And on this verse here, it says that as they stood in the middle of the river of Jordan, there was also dry ground underneath their feet. Have you wondered why the emphasis is on the dry ground? Well, I'll tell you a quick story. Because of my upbringing in Bulgaria, half of the time I lived in the village with my grandparents and my parents. We would go there and work the land and take care of the animals. And then the other part, I would go to school and we would have a place with my other grandparents to live in the city. So they were only an hour away from each other. But in the village, we had pigs and lambs and also chickens and whatever other animals, you name it, we had it with huge land to work. Well, the pigs were always the ones that would basically aggravate everybody. They were wild, they were obnoxious. I mean, you would want to kill a pig and the whole town would know because they would scream and run and throw a kick. It would take 6 people to kill the pig. But a lamb, you never knew when anybody killed their lambs because they never made a peep. They would just follow the shepherd all the way unto death. That's why Jesus is always been said in the Bible that He is the good shepherd, and He's like the lamb that was basically slaughtered for us and for our sins because He did not complain about what was about to happen. Yet, pigs on the other hand, oh no, they're going to be known. Have you heard how demons try to come out of somebody? They always try to scream and yell and make a big deal because demons have no power or authority, but they want to be seen and known. See, when you follow the anointing and the plan of God on your life, you don't have to scream and shout, you just show up. Because the enemy knows when you show up with the power and anointing of God. But screaming and shouting without knowing Jesus is only like a crying pig in the middle of a village. It is good for nothing. So with our pigs, I would go and spray them with water just to play with them, because I knew that if there is enough mud, they will waddle in the mud and they would rise up again and they would be ugly as they could be because they were carrying all the mud. And then my dad would come in and be like, who sprayed the pigs? Well, I did, because I'm the only child. But obviously I played it innocent. I have no idea, Dad. But then I would get stuck in my rubber boots in the mud trying to go and wash them off. And I remember the mud. I don't know if you've ever been in mudslides or in the middle of a mud garden, but you can't really move unless you like pull up your leg and the foot is stuck with mud on your shoes and you're trying to walk. It's like 1,000 pounds on your feet. You can't really walk anywhere. Well, now looking back at what the children of Israel were doing, they were crossing over on dry land because God was saying, I don't want you to get stuck in the mud of your transition. I don't want you to get carried with your past of your mud, of what's on your shoes. I want you to keep on walking because I am the rock. You cannot fail when you step on me. I am your solid foundation. So shake off the mud, the dust, whatever you're carrying off of your past. Leave it on the other side of that wilderness and keep on crossing onto the other side where God is saying, keep on walking. You're only in a transitional season, but you're getting into your promised land. And don't drag everybody else with you unless they're willing to run the race with you. Stop taking people with you that don't want to go anywhere, because that becomes more bondage. If you see, Moses and a whole bunch of people died in the wilderness. There was a good plan for them. Just because they started off good doesn't mean they finished good. I will tell you today, just because some people started off good in ministry doesn't mean they're going to finish good, as long as the mud on their feet is still showing their pride and is still showing their past, and they're still wobbling between the world and the stage. We've got to go from, I am going to be here known and seen for only what I can do, to I am only known and seen in the heavenly places, and I may not be seen in the earthly realm. It may look like it is dark around me, but there is light coming from heaven. It's on my path. I see where I'm going, and I'm not stopping. Amen. So that is where we are, Awaken Church. We're crossing over out of bondage. We're crossing over out of our preconceived mindsets of false humility. We're crossing over out of I'm not good for anything to yes, I am well capable of doing the will of God for my life. We're crossing out of that dysfunction, and we're embracing fully the call of God on our lives. So I want you to stand up with me today.